Have you ever felt like your mind sees patterns others don't? Like the more deeply you think, the more disconnected you feel? If so, you're not alone, and you're not broken. You're just living in a world that wasn't designed for deep thinkers, in a society built on speed, convenience, and surface-level interactions. Depth becomes a liability. The ability to pause, reflect, and ask why, the very hallmark of philosophical thought, gets dismissed as overthinking. But why does this happen? Why do thoughtful people often feel like strangers in their own world? Let's dive into that. Throughout history, those who ask too many questions have always made others uncomfortable. Socrates was sentenced to death for corrupting the youth. Giordano Bruno was burned at the stake for challenging the church. Even in modern times, deep thinkers are sidelined, not with fire or poison, but with silence and exclusion. Why? Because deep thinking threatens the illusion of certainty that most people cling to. When you question reality, you challenge the comfort of routine. When you point out contradictions, you expose what others would rather ignore. This is what I call the depth dilemma. The more clearly you see, the harder it becomes to fit in. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. You don't have to say anything controversial to be seen as difficult. Simply existing as someone who thinks differently can provoke resistance. And often that resistance comes not from hostility, but from fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of change, fear of facing a truth that might shatter long-held beliefs. But let's pause for a moment. What exactly makes deep thinking so threatening? The answer lies in human psychology. Most people construct their worldview like a house of cards, built from childhood, shaped by culture, reinforced by routine. Questioning one belief feels like pulling a single card, but what they fear is the whole thing collapsing. And so, they protect the structure, not with logic, but with defensiveness. Not with curiosity, but with avoidance. This is why you might find that the more insight you gain, the fewer people you can genuinely connect with. You try to talk about meaning, and they change the subject. You ask a philosophical question, and they joke it off. You want truth. They want comfort. And here's the irony. We live in an age with more information than ever. We have access to centuries of wisdom in our pockets. But instead of thinking deeper, we scroll faster. Instead of reflecting, we react. In a digital world that rewards attention spans shorter than a goldfish, deep thinking feels almost rebellious. But there's a cost to that rebellion. Deep thinkers often feel alone, not because they don't want connection, but because connection becomes harder when you crave substance over noise. You see, most people bond over shared interests, but deep thinkers bond over shared depth. That's a rarer connection, and a harder one to find. Philosophers like Kierkegaard and Camus knew this well. They didn't just observe the world, they felt its absurdity in their bones. They didn't just study existence, they wrestled with it. And in doing so, they suffered. Not because they were wrong, but because they were honest. Now, maybe you're watching this and thinking, is it really that bad to think deeply? Can't I just hide it a little? Blend in? Of course you can. But here's the truth. Hiding your depth doesn't make life easier. It just makes it lonelier. Because when you water yourself down to be accepted, the connections you form aren't with you. They're with a version of you that doesn't exist. And that's not connection. That's performance. So what's the solution? It's not to abandon thought or to isolate yourself forever. It's to recognize that depth takes patience. It takes time to find people who think the way you do. It takes courage to stay honest in a world that rewards the opposite. But they're out there. Others who read between the lines, who crave real conversations, who understand that silence doesn't mean emptiness. It means listening. That solitude isn't loneliness, it's clarity. And once you find them, you'll realize something powerful. You were never too deep. The world was just too shallow,